The line, early voting to decide on Albuquerque's next mayor started this week and will run through November 10th, with the runoff election happening, as you know, on the 14th of November. The top two candidates that emerged from the city election held earlier this month, that would be Mr. Tim Keller and Mr. Dan Lewis, are starkly different, I might say. And a recent article in the Journal pointed out some key differences. They differ on sanctuary cities. Mr. Lewis opposes, Mr. Keller supports. On Santa-Lena, Mr. Keller opposes, Mr. Lewis supports. But they both agree that crime is a top problem here in Albuquerque, but have different approaches on how to fix it. And Alicia, now the race is down from that crowded field. Seems like a year ago we had all those people. Suddenly we're in this new era. No surprise that Dan Lewis has come out the way he has. That was actually talked about on Facebook. Lots of places he's going to have to do a scorched earth kind of approach. Is it working for him as you watch what he's trying to do? Is there some headway Dan Lewis is making here?
I don't think so. I think people are really wanting to get away from the negative attack ads in politics. I feel like it leaves a really bad taste in your mouth. And, you know, speaking of the stark contrasts, I just really appreciate that Tim Keller has a plan going forward, and that the plan includes owning the plan and being able to do things at the municipal level. Let
me clarify that. He has mentioned that he wants solutions to come from within this city, from us,
and I think
and not from outside as paid big dough.
You're absolutely right, and I believe that Albuquerque voters are ready. We need change now, and what I've seen from Dan Lewis is, you know, some changes that would need to happen legislatively that could take some time, especially in a short session, and then you have to wait for a long session. People want results right now, and I think that's the major contrast between the two, is that Tim Keller is wanting to make those changes right now and do it with the power that he will be able to have at the city level.
Fair enough. Daniel, you know, the idea that Dan Lewis did punch through, going back to those previous 8. He's got a constituency. He's saying things that people are responding to. We've got a lot of freaked out folks here about crime, all kinds of stuff. Is he making some headway when you look at Dan
I think
Lewis?
he is. I think that he's, you know, there's no doubt he's got a conservative base. I think he's shown the willingness to listen and talk. I think the fact that he was one of the first city councilors to say, we got a problem with APD, was one of the first people to sit down when the Department of Justice came in and said, look, I remember I told him he was wrong for doing it. You know, I think that there are some clear differences. And I think that, you know, it's interesting when we say that, and I love to hear folks talk about it all the time, that they say we don't like the hardcore negative ads, and yet it seems like every time we get them, we get bigger turnouts anyway, and more people get elected, and people win by it. I mean, we saw in the last presidential election, there was no greater difference than, you know, what President Trump said and what Senator Hillary Rodham Clinton said, and, you know, Trump wound up winning. I think there are some stark differences. I think that when you look at the two folks that are left, you know, you look at the whole Racino issue with Tim Keller and working for the consulting company, that's been an issue that's been out there. Then you follow that up with the public financing and getting the money on the side, and, you know, well, don't make the contribution money-wise, we'll call it in kind, but I'm the clean candidate. So I think that, you know, I think where Tim had a chance to say, look, I'm separating myself from all the politicos, and I'm going to run this public financing campaign. I'm going to do it the way that I've talked about. We've seen that every time the heat kind of gets turned up, Tim kind of changes. Dan Lewis has kind of came at it from the very, you know, from the side that says, look, I'm not taking the public financing. I'm going to raise the money. I'm going to do it the way I can do it. And so I think that, you know, I think also one of the important things too is that, you know, I think that at the end of the day, you know, both of these guys, what's interesting is they both have a record. So, you know, it's been a while since we've had multiple candidates. You know, it's lots of times you usually get one candidate with a record that says, your record stinks, but I don't have a record. We got two guys running that, regardless of what they're saying, you can look at Senator Keller's record, State Auditor Keller's record, you can look at City Councilor Dan Lewis's record. And so, you know, there's got to be at some point what they're saying has to match up with what they've done. And so I think it's an interesting opportunity for voters to really see if they're
It's better when it's stark, isn't it? It really is better. And Didi, you know, interestingly.
By the way, I mean, just so you know, if I lived in Albuquerque, I live in Rio Rancho, I'd be voting for Dan Lewis. I mean, I'd do that.
There you go. Didi, interestingly, Mr. Lewis has some tough ads out there, TV ads specifically, about Mr. Keller's record. But there has been a change, because one of them had something attributed to Mr. Keller by quote, but we're not sure if that's actually what was going on there. Has Mr. Lewis taken it just a touch too far in your view?
I think so, and I think he was caught in misquoting Tim Keller, and from what I understand, he has corrected that mistake. But I mean, basically, I think I agree with Alicia that Tim, while Dan Lewis and Tim both have records, Dan Lewis's record is all about the city. And so he's sort of taking on the role of the incumbent in this race. And Tim Keller as the outsider, as the challenger, as the change candidate. Right. So I think that's the dynamic that is at play here. And their differences are very, in addition to being substantive, they're stylistic differences as well. Tim Keller, on the approach to crime, which they have said they both feel that's the #1 issue, and their approaches are that they're going to bring in a new chief, they're going to increase the size of the police force, and so on. But if you dig a little deeper than that, you will see that Tim Keller has like a position paper that is exhaustive. He is a policy wonk. I can tell you that because he was my colleague in the New Mexico Senate, and I'm partial to him for that reason. But his plan has, I think, 75 points. I got to point 25, and I was exhausted by thinking, well, should we have a major or a colonel post in the Albuquerque police force? Maybe we should eliminate one.
But interestingly, I'm interested that you just said that, though, because both candidates have firmly rejected Mayor Berry's big crime plan that he just came out with a little bit ago. They just wiped it away, saying we don't really need to deal with this.
Well, they were both questioning the methodology and saying that it was more window dressing. I think Keller said it was sort of like looking at your watch and saying what time it was.
That's right. Tom, interesting, again, back to this point of clear, stark differences for the voters. That actually serves voters better in some circles. But as you see it now, as we sit here, how's this race shaping up as you see it? Is it going to engender more activity? That's the first things first. Are we going to get more votes at the booth?
I don't know if it's going to generate more votes at the booth, and here's the reason why: is a lot of I think you saw more Democrats or those who are registered as Democrat coming out to vote on the sick leave, and because it didn't pass, maybe they would be discouraged, coming out to the main election. So for that reason, I think it's going to be a lot closer, because there just isn't enough out there for the strong Democrat liberal to go out and vote. Whereas for the conservative on the same side, Dan Lewis doesn't really provide that much either. Both candidates are really good at playing the edges.
Gotcha.
And nobody's really playing the middle. They'll all say they are.
Sure.
But looking at some of the overviews from the Albuquerque Journal that they did on the comparisons of the two candidates, you have one Keller who's very much in favor of APS and existing APS programs. Mr. Lewis is not so much. On economic development, they are both very split on that particular issue. But what I'd like to see is more focus on, they're talking about crime. That's good. How are we going to build that base of jobs? In all honesty, because we're going to have a severe shortage of just blue-collar workers, of union workers.
But don't you think you got to figure out the foundation before you can do that? I feel like the city is so bad that we can't even talk about bringing businesses in until you can not be leading in property crime, leading in this crime. I just feel like, I think that we're in a really bad spot. I think it's
we are, most definitely. Albuquerque is, in New Mexico for that matter, is in a very bad spot, and government is not going to save us. Government will help to enable, I think, private business to be successful.
Right.
And that's when hopefully jobs will start to circulate. But that answer isn't, I don't think, from a political perspective, in mandatory paid sick leave.
Right.
You have to be able to help the ones who are doing it right, encourage them to do, to create more jobs. And those who are doing it wrong, you have to police them in some form or fashion and say, this is not acceptable. But my political philosophy isn't one that government is going to save us. It's not. It's here to maintain the status quo. It's up to private sector to really kind of provide that extra bit of investment.
I think you're going to get a bigger turnout than you think.
Okay.
I do.
Okay.
I think I agree with a lot of what Tom said. I do think, though, that the average person out there sees the two candidates as Wayne Johnson, the conservative Republican, Tim Keller, the progressive liberal. And I think that Dan Lewis is the conservative Republican, and Tim Keller as the progressive liberal. And I think that they think those guys are clearly entrenched in their areas. The folks that I think the sick leave ordinance has excited the folks that were for it, they were close. They think that if they elect Tim Keller, they can possibly try to do this through legislative action. The Dan Lewis folks feel like it was too close, that if you do get Tim Keller, you're going to wind up with this stuff passed. So I think we're going to get a bigger turnout. I think it's also important to point out that I don't feel like we have a real incumbent in this race, because even though Dan Lewis was a city councilor, I mean, from day one, he was a thorn in the side of R.J. Berry.
But one thing that you just said is that the city is in bad shape, and I think that voters are seeing that, and they may be seeing Dan Lewis as more of the same.
That's true. No, he was a city
R.J.
councilor.
Berry. I mean, he's been a city councilor under this watch. He's operates under some of the same playbook as R.J. Berry. So
I don't think he operates under the same
voters
playbook. I
going
think
to say, hey, enough is enough. Our city is in bad shape. We need a stark difference.
Oh, I
We
agree.
need a change, and I'm going to go out and vote for Tim
And
Keller.
I think at the end of the day, that the objects, the opportunity has been presented. I think that and again, I'm not working on any campaigns. They're not asking me. I mean, if I was Dan Lewis, I'd be talking about all the stuff that I opposed R.J. Berry on. I'd be talking about all the stuff that I,
kidding.
took. Yeah, I mean, he took hits. He took hits from me at the beginning of the deal when I would say, I don't know why you're doing this. He took hits. There were editorials written about him, not supporting R.J. when R.J. first got elected. He wasn't on board for plans. I know Republicans were upset with him. And now I think that that's going to turn out to be a plus for him.
That's right.
If he can get the word out that, hey, listen, I was kind of an independent conservative.
We got 2 minutes. Let me kind of flip to another thing. I'll start with you, Alicia, on this. I'm gleaning you're supporting Mr. Keller, if I'm hearing you correctly. I'm interested in all your all's opinion on this. Has Tim Keller proved a point about public financing? There was a point in the race where it looked like, wow, he's a little underfinanced here compared to the rest of the field, or the top tier of the field. And it didn't happen that way. It worked out great for him. Is a point being proven here in your view about
I
public
really think
finance?
so, and I think his block by block approach of getting each individual signature for him to run, each individual dollar makes a difference for him. I think that matters to people in Albuquerque, and I think they're tired of money in politics altogether. But until we have all candidates operating under a good public financing system, we're going to have this uneven challenge at all times, and you're
Gotcha.
still going to have the IEs, you're still going to have the PACs who are going to participate because
Right.
not everyone is on the same playing field if you're operating with
Well,
such
there's-
different levels of funding.
Exactly right. Sorry to cut you off there. There's heartburn, Tom, out there across the land about how money is coming into the race, even if you are publicly financed.
Oh, absolutely.
So.
I will say that Tim Keller is running the better campaign.
In what sense?
I mean, he's just more organized. He's on message. I mean, when you talk about putting the paperwork out there, he's really showing he wants this bad. Whereas Dan Lewis just isn't showing me that right now.
Okay.
He's defensive in in all of his interviews. He's not controlling the message. He's not showing that he's a leader. Whereas Tim Keller is, they both are sitting in their current offices. And one is doing a better job at leveraging that office to say, here's what I'm doing for the state. Could be probably the most effective state auditor we've ever seen. right? But meanwhile, Dan Lewis just isn't really owning what he has done or his positions as city council. And I think that's going to really come to his demise.
I
a
think
good point.
on the public financing thing,
Yeah.
I think it's proven to be woefully a train wreck. I think the fact that this whole conversation is being had about whether or not Tim Keller is getting this money outside of the deal, and that makes everything okay, I think it's showing that the public financing isn't working.
Dee Dee, your thought on that?
I totally disagree with that. I think there's a study that's come out recently that said over 60% of New Mexicans, and specifically Bernalillo County,
right.
support strongly public financing. I think Tim Keller is playing on that. The problem of independent expenditures is a separate one that exists both with privately financed campaigns and publicly financed campaigns. Having said that, we need to fix both the independent expenditure side and the public finance side. A lot of Republicans and Democrats have taken public financing in the past, including Lewis in his run for city council, but didn't see it to be adequate funded for a mayor's race. So there was an attempt to get it better funded so more candidates would participate. Wayne Johnson essentially killed that on the county commission, and along with the two other commissioners, and so it was underfunded, and yet Keller took it anyway, knowing that it was something that was
But see,
very
that's
popular.
but that's the
Gotta wrap
million-dollar
up. Go
question,
ahead.
Gene. We're going to spend that money. I mean, we just got done talking about doctors. We talked
Right.
about crime. We talked about schools. You can only chop the pie up so many times.
That's right.
And I think at the end of the day, you know, it's a priority. Are we going to fund elections? Or are we going to fund schools? Are we going to fund medical? Are we going to fund police? That's something that people are going to have to decide.
Well, I was just about to say, we'll see what the voters have to say about that, won't we?